My name is Monty Hummel, and I'm chair of the steering committee of the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement, and I'll be the MC for this press conference. To begin, I'd like to welcome everybody here today for this important announcement concerning the CBFA. In a nutshell, we are announcing joint recommendations for a caribou action plan for over 3 million hectares of boreal forest in northeastern Ontario, and these recommendations enjoy the support from provincial government, the relevant forest companies, conservation groups, and most important, the people who live there. As such, we believe this announcement represents exactly what the CBFA stands for, bringing together a concern for both conservation and economic prosperity in a manner that respects the rights and wishes of those most directly affected, and doing so on an unprecedented scale in terms of the size of the landscape involved. The 19 companies and 9 non-government signatories to the CBFA are currently also committed to and making progress on other specific areas mentioned in the agreement in Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta. Let me now introduce our guest speakers. Natural Resources Minister Michael Gravelle will speak first and has the honor of making this breakthrough announcement. He will be followed in order by Chief Linda Job of the Taquatagamu Nation, then Mayor Tom Loughran of Timmins, who is also president of the Northeastern Ontario Mayors Association, followed by Jim Lopez, President and CEO of Tembec. And although Jim will be speaking on behalf of the industry, I want to acknowledge the presence of Richard Garneau, the President and CEO of Resolute Forest Products, who will also be available for questions. And finally, Janet Sumner, who's the Executive Director of the Wildlands League, which is the Ontario chapter of the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. Each will deliver a short statement, after which we will open the floor to the press for questions. So with that, I give you Minister Gravelle.
Thank you so much, Monty. I appreciate the invitation. It's great to be on the same stage as you, sir. We've done some great work in the past, and we will continue to do so. It's wonderful to be joined on the stage by our other speakers. I do want to say at the very beginning, I've actually developed a bit of an eye problem, so I'm going to try and read my remarks as carefully as I can, but if I stumble, it's not because of our office staff party last night that went on. Even though it was fun. Thanks, all of you, for joining us. And the fact is that we've come here today in support of a very common cause. The Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement Secretariat is presenting the province with recommendations on ways of protecting threatened woodland caribou while at the same time ensuring a strong forest economy and supporting economic development in our communities in northeastern Ontario. I do want to applaud the leadership of Monty Hummel and the hard work of the members of the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement specifically. I'd like to also acknowledge the hard work of CPAWS. My good friend Janet Sumner to Tembec. Obviously, it's great to have President and CEO Jim Lopez here, and also Richard Garneau, the President and CEO of Resolute Forest Products, for helping develop some truly innovative recommendations for the Abitibi River Forest. And I want to say here off the top that our ministry and I as minister support this collaborative approach in developing these recommendations. When the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement was signed between the Forest Products Association of Canada and the environmental community in 2010, it truly marked the beginning of a precedent-setting partnership and redefined the historic relationship between these two interest groups. In fact, without being glib, I think a lot of people wouldn't have imagined all of us being together on one stage many years ago. So this is really incredibly outstanding work. And the outstanding work that they've been doing together with regard to woodland caribou protection, I think reflects very much the sincerity of the partnership that's taken place. And it also demonstrates the commitment of the members to work very closely with each other and with government, and also, of course, with First Nations to find viable, on-the-ground solutions to balance economic development and environmental sustainability in Canada's forest sector. On that, I certainly would like to recognize Chief Linda Job. She'll be speaking next. Thank you very much for being here. Mayor Tom Loughran, my good friend, Mayor Timmins, for their participation in the event today, which is very significant, and also their support of the CBFA recommendations. I look forward, our ministry looks forward to reviewing the recommendations that are being presented to us today. This is incredibly good work, and again, I want to express my strong support for the approach that's been taken and the work that's been done. I'm looking forward to working with members of the CBFA to achieve our shared goal of balancing what is best for industry, for northern communities, and for the protection of woodland caribou in Ontario. Thank you so very, very much. And now, if I may, I will introduce Chief Linda Job. Thank you very much for being here of Takwa-Tagamu First Nation. Mayor Job.
Thank you, Mr. Gravel. I'd like to say it's been an honor to work here with Wildlife Leagues and developing this plan that we will work together as a living document so that First Nations and industry develop partnerships so that we can take care of the environment and maintain the economic sustainability of the Northeast. With working with Anna and Alan over the past few months has given us the opportunity to ensure that First Nation voice is taken into consideration, and that we will continue to work so that the caribou will be here for a long time, and that we will be able to ensure that we can continue to sustain the woodland caribou. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tom Loughran. As stated earlier, I'm the Mayor of Timmins, but I also represent Neoma. And Neoma, just for from your perspective, is communities from Hearst down to Matheson over to Timmins, so it's a significant area. I also want to thank the group for pulling this together today. This is not something that just happened overnight. There has been a lot of work, time, and effort by all the members on the stage. And from a community perspective, I really look at this group that's up here as almost being historic when you see community, industry, environmental work together towards a common solution, which is the recommendation that we have here today. I also want to talk a little bit about the three pillars, which is social, economic, and environment. As a mayor of Northeastern Ontario, this is something that we have talked on many different occasions with the minister, with other ministers. It's something that we continue to say out loud. I mean, the community of Timmins, as an example, is going through its 100th year. I mean, forestry and mining has been our lifeblood. We understand the environment. We understand the importance of community and industry putting money into community. We understand the importance of the jobs. And I mean, again, when I stand here today, we have a company like Resolute who's actually putting considerable dollars into the community of Iroquois Falls that's going to continue to keep jobs. I mean, that's something that we very much appreciate. And I think when you look at this announcement and the recommendation for the Abitibi River Forest, you've got to think about the communities of Cochrane. You've got to think about the communities of Iroquois Falls. You've got to think about the community of Timmins and the rest of Northeast and what this means to us. The last thing I want to say is this, in my mind, is a great template for how government and communities and industry and environmentalists can work together. But the blueprint that has been set out for the Abitibi River Forest may not work in another forest. But again, what can work is all of us sitting together and bringing a plan forward that can work for all of us. So again, I'm proud to be here today, and I'm very, very proud to support this recommendation. And I will turn it over to Mr. Lopez.
Good morning. My name is Jim Lopez, and I'm President and CEO of Tembec. I'm joined by Richard Garneau, President and CEO of Resolute Forest Products. And we're thrilled to be here today on behalf of our respective companies and on behalf of the forest products industry. Tembec has had a long history of collaboration with our conservation partners to do some really good things from the environment, from the Parks and Protected Spaces program called Lands for Life some time ago here in Ontario, to FSC certification, and now the Canadian Boreal Forestry Agreement. So I see many of those conservation partners in the studio this morning. It's just great to be able to continue a history of collaboration that really now is permeated throughout the forest products industry in this Canadian Boreal Forestry Agreement. I think the important thing about today, obviously, is what's happening in Northeast Ontario in terms of how industry has been able to collaborate with First Nations, with conservation groups, with local mayors and government officials to come up with a win-win situation where, you know, the industry recognized when we signed the forestry agreement that more had to be done to protect certain parts of the environment. We recognized that we would have to look at areas where we harvest forest and come up with compromises that are going to be win-wins. And the great thing about the announcement today is it's definitely a win for the environment, for the critters that live in the environment, and it's a win for our company because we're able to protect the long-term viability of our operation in that region. But also importantly, this announcement represents really the first major breakthrough in terms of implementation of this pan-Canadian forestry agreement. This is the first on-the-ground implementation, and I think that the pattern here is, as the mayor represented, is the collaboration. With collaboration, we know we can do great things, protect the economic interest of the industry, and protect the environment and the interest of the First Nations at the same time. So I'm thrilled to be here today, and I'd like to congratulate all the people that really did the on-the-ground hard work to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Richard Garneau. I'm the President and CEO of Resolute Forest Products. I would like to congratulate the various environmental and industry partners as well as the CBFA secretarial staff on today's announcement. The announced Woodland Caribou Action Plan for the Abitibi River Forest in northeastern Ontario is a significant achievement in realizing progress on the CBFA mandate. The recommendation unveiled today will apply to 3 million hectares of the Abitibi forests in northeastern Ontario. Negotiations were particularly relevant to Resolute, considering that we represent 57% of the total timber supply allocation on this forest. Resolute Iroquois Falls Paper Mills, which is currently undertaking a $20 million investment, relies primarily on fiber from this region and employ about 300 people. And if you add the indirect jobs, it's about 1,000 jobs that are generated by the mills. We are pleased with this tangible recommendation in northeastern Ontario. This recommendation supports the 3 pillars of sustainability. And I think that what is going to happen is that we're going to do what is appropriate for the environment. We're going also to do what is beneficial for the communities and what is economically viable in the long term. We certainly appreciate the leadership of Minister Gravel and his staff. They will play a very important role in the implementation of this recommendation. We also appreciate the hard work and ongoing support of local community leaders. Their strong determination and commitment to regional prosperity is also a very important to make sure that we're going to see a successful outcomes. Today, announcements also follow our recent milestone of becoming the largest manager of FSC certified forests in the world. So I think that these achievements reinforce not only our company environmental credential, but I think that it also stands as a demonstration to Canada global leadership in sustainable forest management. Thank you.
I get the joy of being the last speaker. My name is Janet Sumner. I'm the Executive Director of Wildlands League. It's a chapter of the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. CPAWS is a boots-on-the-ground conservation group from coast to coast, and we have a chapter in every region of this agreement. We believe in building solutions and solutions that can last. And so to do that, we know that we have to have collaborative partnerships like the one we have here today. We know forestry and we know caribou. And I'm pleased to be here with you today to share what we've done together in a collaboration in northeastern Ontario with industry, First Nations, local mayors, and scientists. We're very, very proud of this collaboration. We started with a very simple problem. Can you develop a plan to protect caribou habitat and at the same time make sure you have a sustainable or viable forest industry? Well, the answer is yes, and we did it. We have jointly developed a science-based plan for caribou in the Abitibi River Forest that will conserve over 800,000 hectares of boreal woodland caribou habitat, while at the same time supporting harvesting in other parts of that forest under world-leading standards for conservation. This is truly a landmark day for us. And while today's announcement is the first of what we fully expect to be many more to come under the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement, I want to reflect on the fact that we are here in Ontario, and this is the first. It goes to show that great things can happen when environmentalists and industrialists agree that conservation and forestry can coexist. When we listen with respect to local First Nations and northern communities, and when a government is responsive. Today is why we joined with 8 other environmental groups in signing the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement and with members of the Forest Products Association 2 years ago, because we not only believe in hope, we believe in making it happen. I want to thank Chief Linda Job and Mayor Tom Loughran for being here today. My staff, alongside industry, worked very hard with the community of Taquatagama Nation, and especially on their community interest zone. We have also listened to northern leaders to come up with a plan that better reflects their needs. I want to thank Resolute for their faith in the agreement and in working together. And my heartfelt thanks to Tembec, who we worked with especially closely. We have spent many months around the table working on this plan, on road trips, eating cheese whiz, bad things like that. Your honesty, hard work, and unwavering belief have made today's result possible. Thank you for walking the talk. Today we have good news, and on behalf of the environmental groups I work with on this plan, Greenpeace, Ontario Nature, the David Suzuki Foundation, and the incredible hard work of the Ivy Foundation, let me say that this is how we should do all business in the boreal forest. Thanks.
You're welcome questions, and if you could indicate who you'd like to have answer the question, that would be great.
Thank you, Monty.
Don't be shy.
Minister, since we're the only ones who comes out of the name of actually.
I can see you, though.
So, Mike, what I've heard a lot of talk about hectares and stuff like this, but where does this go from here? Do you have final approval on this?
We will be reviewing the recommendations. We've been working very closely with the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement Secretariat. I've had a number of opportunities at meetings. Obviously, I've had opportunities to meet with industry and with municipalities over the recent period of time. In particular, we are very strongly supportive of this approach. It really, truly is a historic day, so we want to have an opportunity from our ministry to review the recommendations. But again, I am more than comfortable in saying that we think this is an extraordinarily positive way to bring all the partners together, something that I think perhaps in years gone by we might not have thought would be something that would be easy to do. So, we want so we will take some time to review the recommendations. Not a lot of time, may I say, and I'm very proud to stand here with all these people representing so many different organizations, environmental groups, First Nations, municipalities, industry. Thank them for their incredible hard work and commit to them that we will be reviewing this and moving towards implementation as soon as we can.
So are there any, does this go up for public comment or anything like that?
There may be some consultation requirements we want to address, but this is again, I just want to emphasize as much as possible how much we as a ministry, and certainly I as a minister, support this. As you would know as well, I'm an MPP from Northern Ontario, so I certainly understand the challenges, and it's always been about finding a balance. And again, the extraordinary work that's been done here is perhaps the best example we can find of a model for how you can work together to find solutions to maintain our key environmental priorities and our protection of the habitat of woodland caribou in this instance, and also make sure that our industry can move forward in a very, very positive way. So we will be looking at the recommendations, obviously very seriously, with an eye towards moving towards implementation.
Can I put a question to Sumner, one of the forestry company representatives? I hear a lot about the process and how happy everybody is to all work together. It's fine, but I need to know what the actual impact is review, what's the actual impact of this?
Sure. I would say that we've been committed to planning together for some time, and actually prior to even the CBFA being signed, we were working with Tembec on this unit. And last summer, the long-term management direction for the Abitibi River Forest was announced. And at that time, the long-term management direction sent kind of a shockwave into the system because it was looking at predicting or forecasting up to a 50% drop in fiber supply. That really obviously didn't come to good news to the Northern Mayors or to the industry. And on top of that, it also wasn't looking at having a great outcome for caribou. So that's when we started to get busy and said, how do we start to resolve this and make sure that we've got a viable industry and a good outcome for caribou? What you see in terms of our recommendations is it actually starts to drop the disturbance level for caribou over time, which is what scientists say needs to happen, because in this particular range, we've got it's a highly disturbed range with a rapidly declining population. So the first thing you need to do is start bringing down the disturbance level, which this plan does. The second thing it does is on configuration, this plan is better than where we were tracking. So what it does is it means that configuration is where you have your disturbance and where you have your intact contiguous areas or connected areas. So in the northern part of this zone, what we're recommending is an area of approximately 835,000 hectares, which would be intact contiguous and would have no harvesting. The rest of it would be managed with world-leading sustaining forestry practices. So we've got sort of a middle zone that we're recommending would see modified forestry to maintain caribou because that's where they are. In the southern zone, we actually haven't seen caribou there for some time, so we've got a strategic approach to recovery and trying to especially honor where the First Nations are headed, which is restoration around Lake Abitibi, and that's certainly where we've been hearing things from Waguchig First Nation. But the result of this plan actually is a 20% increase in fiber. So for us, the plan is better for caribou, and I'll let Jim speak to this, but my understanding is when you've got a better fiber supply, and I understand that also the quality of the saw logs is better as well because you can't get a lot of saw logs out of a 3-inch diameter wood, Al keeps telling me, and that's what we have basically in the north. So this plan actually lines up both caribou and a good outcome for industry. And we suspect that means that the mayor and First Nations will also be happier because we'll keep jobs there. Jim?
A short crack at trying to reinforce what was pointed out here by Ms. Summers. First of all, I'm not knowledgeable on the ground, but I am blessed to have an organization with foresters that are knowledgeable on the ground, and we're very fortunate to be working with a conservation group like CPAWS that are equally knowledgeable on the ground, because these are important land-based, on-the-ground decisions. You can't do these in Toronto, you can't do them in front of a computer. But as was pointed out by Janet, it was really, when we looked at the first plan, it didn't make economic sense, and we didn't think it made environmental sense, and Janet supported that. And so we said, let's come up with a better arrangement. And the plan that we end up with actually pushes the majority of the protection to a more intact forest that is further north, that has less roads built through it. So it's just a much better habitat for caribou. And the fact that it's further north means the trees are smaller because of the growing season. It's a longer distance to get the wood to the mill, so it's more expensive. So we were able to come up with a plan that actually puts the lowest quality, highest cost wood that the company would be harvesting into this protected area, and leave the forest that are more around our mills where it's already eroded and it's much more disturbed as the main wood supply for our Cochrane operation. So it was really just a great outcome, but it only worked because we collaborated with an objective in mind instead of self-interest in mind.
Yes, Minister Gravel.
Sure.
I thought that you, in your Far North Act, you basically set aside 50% of Northern Ontario for preservation, and when I look at the map here, it's obviously it's only a third or a quarter of the land. So, are you moving away from that target, or do you still have the intention of setting aside 50% of Northern Ontario for
Yeah, our goal and our commitment, of course, in terms of the Far North legislation is to basically end up with 50% protected land and 50% open for development. Yeah, but each sort of First Nation, in terms of their territory, will be developing community land use plans, and they will be making decisions in partnership with the province of Ontario. So, for example, we've signed a number of agreements in terms of the Far North legislation. And I can tell you that in some cases they're protecting 35% of the land for cultural and other significant reasons in terms of the community. So it varies. So this is going to be obviously something that will be forming out depending on how each land use planning process unfolds. So our commitment is still there. But this is a really good example of the fact that we. Janet made the point about when this process started with the Abitibi River Forest Management Plan. I mean, Mayor Loughran will recall that last year at AMO was when we had our first discussion about that, long before I was Minister of Natural Resources. And this kind of collaboration is one that I think is so positive in terms of reaching our mutually agreeable goals. And in terms of the Far North, it doesn't in any way impact on our commitment to the development of the protection of the Far North, while at the same time providing clarity to industry in terms of where development and economic activity can take place.
Minister, I'm reading an email I received about that CBC News has obtained new information about pending cuts of the ministry. A transcript of a message delivered internally by senior bureaucrat to MNR staff shows MNR will lose about 10% of its annual budget. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, we announced some time ago, and actually as part of the release of the budget in this past spring, that the Ministry of Natural Resources would be embarking on a 3-year transformation plan, which will have an impact, certainly ultimately on our staffing and some of our offices. Let me put it in a bit of context. We are a ministry, pretty remarkable ministry, that has responsibility now for 46 pieces of legislation. Back in the mid-1990s, it was about 28 pieces of legislation. We are committed to maintaining our commitment to natural resource management and conservation and our core priorities: fish and wildlife, crown land management, forestry, parks, public safety. But we also have to manage with a significant internal deficit. So the transformation plan will have an impact on how we are able to deliver services, but we believe that we can deliver our services in certainly a more efficient fashion. By working with our stakeholders and by working very closely with our ministry staff. So the Deputy Minister did indeed, very much in the spirit of being transparent and honest with the ministry staff, deliver a video to the staff earlier this week. There are still a number of decisions that need to be made. These are tough decisions. It's a very tough time in terms of the fiscal challenges we face in terms of eliminating the deficit by 2017-18, and also dealing with our internal deficit. The goal and our commitment is to maintain our principles in terms of our core priorities of our ministry, and at the same time find a way to better deliver services, and that remains our commitment.
What do we see in this video? What are you telling your employees?
There will be some impacts in terms of staffing. We haven't made the final decision in terms of what those numbers will be, but we were obviously very clear about the fact that we are, in essence, dealing over a 3-year period of time with dealing with a $70 million challenge in terms of the deficit we need to deal with, plus the obligations we have to meet our budget requirements in terms of helping eliminate the deficit 2017-18. So we will be continuing to work closely with our ministry staff. The decisions related to potential closures of office will be made relatively soon. I want to be very honest. I'll want to be speaking to people like Mayor Loughran and other northern mayors as well. Certainly, I'm a northern guy. I mentioned it earlier. I'm very conscious, certainly, of how important the Ministry of Natural Resources and their field offices are all across the the province, and, you know, I wish we were in a time when we could be significantly increasing our budget. But the fact is, our budget has remained essentially the same. Our responsibilities have increased considerably, and this 3-year transformation will, at the end of the process, I believe, give us a stronger ministry, leave us with a stronger ministry, and a ministry where indeed we can continue to maintain our commitment to our core principles as a ministry.
How many people are you looking at really now?
Pardon me?
How many people will you
Haven't made a final decision made on that, but again, it's important for us to,
have any estimates?
pardon me?
Do you have any estimates?
I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to make any estimates at this time. We will be open about this and transparent and with our staff about it, and we'll be trying to make the most sensitive decisions we can in terms of the impact certainly on staff, let alone on the communities. There will be a very strong, continue to be a very strong field presence of our ministry in the province and in Northern Ontario. One of the first things I learned, though, in this ministry, as important as it is in Northern Ontario, is certainly a very significant ministry all across the province. But those decisions have not been made. We're a little bit off topic, aren't we, Monty?
Yeah, so that was 70 million over 3 years?
That's the over 3 year. That's we have a significant internal deficit plus other obligations.
This young man here has been very patiently waiting.
Oh, okay, yeah. Can we look at
Hi, Minister. I was wondering if I could ask you a question.
Sure.
Earth Rangers, every holiday season, Earth Rangers is helping raise money to help protect the woodland caribou. What do you think Earth Rangers can do to help to take initiative?
Well, thank you very much for the question, and I think everybody up on the stage here appreciates that. That really was our very much our goal today. We're all standing up here, absolutely with a common cause, which is to find the balance between sort of protecting the habitat of our woodland caribou, while at the same time allowing our economy in Northern Ontario, particularly based in the forest products industry, to move forward. And I think the recommendations that have been brought forward today by the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement is a really, really good example of how we can achieve the goal that you're speaking about, and at the same time very much help to continue to grow our economy in Northern Ontario. So I appreciate that question. Does anybody else want to respond to that?
Oh, just great work.
Just great work. Exactly. Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Can someone tell me a little bit more about what's currently happening with the land that's being set aside? What's going on there now?
Again, I'm not the forester and the people that are doing the planning, but this will have to go in. There is a provincial planning process, management unit, or SFL by SFL. So this will have to be embedded in the forest management plan, which is in the process of actually being written. These are rewritten periodically to look forward and talk about what areas will be harvested, where roads will be built, and what areas will not be harvested or will be protected. So there's a process already in place to do that. So what we needed was guidance from the minister and his staff to say, yes, we support this initiative, protect these caribou. We support it, put it in this area. And then there's a lot of planning people that sit in front of these charts and maps and actually guide this thing out. Somebody asked earlier about a public consultation process. Part of renewing the forest management plan is a public consultation process, so that will be embedded in that process.
Well, one of the other concerns you might be able to speak to as well, we've been hearing a lot about this collaboration to be able to reach where we are today, but you have to admit that they're rather strange bedfellows, some environmental groups and logging companies. So I'm happy to see that everyone is pleased with the solution, but can you tell us a little bit more about how everyone ended up in bed together? A little strange at first blush.
Well, it was more likely in cars or backroom meeting places and really seedy hotels in the north. Sorry, not that all the hotels are seedy, but just that we tended to go low cost. But the way that it worked for us is that about 4 years ago, I guess, or more, we started working with Tembec on this particular plan. About 4 years ago in total, they started negotiating the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement, which was 9 sort of non-governmental groups and the Industry Association, Forest Products Association of Canada. That was a 2-year negotiation process to say, can we actually work together and figure out a common way of collaborating across Canada. And they came up with the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement, which was launched in May of 2010. And when they did that, they said, we're going to have planning for all of the areas that are in the tenures of the FPAC companies. And I think now it totals somewhere in the region of 76 million hectares across Canada. So we're going to be doing planning for all of them. The notable thing is this is the first area. And it's going to come out with a conservation plan for caribou. There'll be protected areas plans, et cetera, et cetera. And as we start to do that, we picked 5 phase 1 areas. There are 2 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, and 2 in Alberta. And so we're actually actively working on all of those files right now. But as you can see, it's a monumental task to be charting a course for 76 million hectares that's really going to have the twin pillar goal of having good conservation outcomes and a viable forest industry. We don't have actual numbers. One of the challenges is caribou across Canada work differently. In Alberta, where you have more impacted ranges, you can actually get in there and start counting. In Ontario, we have woodland caribou really interact at a range level, and probably the best expert in this room on caribou would be Monty, who wrote a book on it. So you might want to talk to him about caribou. But we're planning for the range in Ontario. So it's at the range level, and we do know where that is, and the ministry have actually worked with the federal government on establishing where the different caribou ranges are. And this Kasagami range, where the Abitibi River Forest plan is going to be, is one of the most impacted ranges in Canada.
So like, are we talking like, are we down to like hundreds of caribou, or are we talking thousands of caribou?
There are threatened species. They're an endangered species in Canada, and they're listed federally. And in Ontario, this is one of the most impacted, one of the most significantly impacted ranges. So it's not really done by the numbers, but it's more done by how threatened they are, and how the science works is they look at what the disturbance level is, and there's a correlation between that and probability of persistence. And so then they, yeah, it gets into quite a technical conversation then, but which I'd be happy to have with you. But basically, it's the science says you have a probability of persistence that's dependent on your disturbance, human-caused disturbance levels. And in this area, that was one of our major goals, was to reduce the disturbance level, so we gave caribou a greater chance of surviving.
Everybody, the minister quite literally does have a plane.
I do.
He's already stayed 10 minutes longer than he promised to. So if there's any last question for the minister, we could do it now.
One last question. I mean, back to my previous point, how can you ensure that this agreement goes ahead and you protect all this piece of land if you're reducing your budget of the industry?
The forestry, I mean, we are maintaining our commitment to our, obviously our core principles, our ministry. Yes, that's a significant challenge we have, but it will not impact our ability to continue to work on issues related to, obviously, the forestry sector. We're responsible for forestry. CEO Jim Lopez made reference to the forest management plan that we're working on. So indeed, we will be able to make that commitment as I stand here, that indeed we can work together on this. I mean, this is, our challenges are real, but our commitment is also very significant and real in terms of us maintaining our commitment to our key priorities, and certainly the forestry sector is one of them. So we will.